First one is the yellow Centaurea macrocephala. This one is called Cardinal Climber. This one is Chrysanthemum coronarium, which is widely used by Asian cultures as a spring green. This one is yarrow or Acalia terracotta. Looks like Anthemis tinctoria or a white version of Anthemis tinctoria.
It is a profusion of blossoms and feathery greenery arching over the winding pathways like fireworks in foliage. It's the celebrated Habitat Gardens at Valentine Farm in Bethel, Maine. But it is more than just a masterful display of gardening skill.
We need to provide easy, diverse avenues for people to see themselves as conservationists. And gardening is brilliant at that, because you can have a pot on your stoop and you can have a plot in the backyard or in your community. So gardening can lead to conservation action.
We can't assume that, everybody knows the need for conservation and feels the threat that is imposed on the world now. Loss of habitats and climate change. We can't assume that people feel that. So what we knew is we need to bring it home in a basic way, in your backyard, in your garden, with your kids, with your family, and making them feel immersed in nature, having nature be close up, feeling a sense of wonder about bugs and butterflies and that sort of thing. Fall in love with nature first, become a conservationist second.
The Habitat for All Garden sits on the property in Bethel, Maine of the Mahoosic Land Trust, a certified land trust in western Maine. The property was once a farm belonging to a local family named Valentine, whose last occupant, Richard Valentine, left it to the land trust in his will. The site is still referred to as the Valentine Farm, and it includes 1.2 miles of trails through woods and fields, as well as the offices of the land trust and the Habitat for All Garden. Several years ago, in addition to protecting 25,000 acres of conservation land, the Land Trust started offering education and outreach programs. Barbara Murphy, formerly an associate professor at the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, was hired to run these programs. As part of that role, she and her husband Mike, an educator and horticulturist, came up with the idea of the pollinator garden, which evolved in 2023 into the Habitat for All program. Habitat for All means preserving the environment for all living things, people as well as plants and animals.
The garden was just an idea that came to me when I first started with the Mahoosic Land Trust back in 2017. We were new to this property. It was very raw. The trail was just starting to be in place. And as I explored the property, I thought, what would bring people here? We have woods, we have fields, but there's nothing colorful, nothing that's going to draw folks here. And since I'm a gardener, I thought I'll just put in a little pollinator garden. And at that time, there was an overgrown squash and pumpkin field where the garden is now. And I thought, oh, that's a perfect location.
About 6 years ago, it was an old weedy pumpkin patch, and we thought, could we make a very small garden there just with some demonstrations of plants and draw attention to pollinators. And so it started about 10 by 10 feet, and then got a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And each year we crazily told ourselves that we weren't there yet. And so now we're there in terms of size and completeness. Here's an interesting plant here. This is a plant called wine cups, or the Latin name is Callirrhoe bushii. And it's a prairie plant. It's native to the central part of the country. And it's a plant that we use as a knitter. Like think of knitting with a knitting needle. What it does is it knits together the garden because the stems are so long that they travel a distance and then come up through other plants. And so you never really know after time, you never really know where that plant started. turned it off. Well, the problem with the current site is that it was used agriculturally for a long time, but before that, the topsoil was stripped away and sold. And that makes it very difficult. And then on top of that, there's a layer of hardpan, of compressed sand from when an ancient river flew over the land and compressed the soil. So we actually had to use augers and drills to get through. We had to add compost. So it was not an easy task to start this and then to continue to plant. So we did that. And then our first plant selection was about 20 plants that we knew were very hard to kill. There were plants like black-eyed Susans and purple coneflowers and liatris and some others that we knew would be deep-rooted, would break through the hard pan, could survive on low water. And so that was the backbone of the garden. And then we, over time, added other plants.
In 2018, I offered my first gardening class because I've taught the Master Gardening course for a number of years in the area, and I thought I need to bring people and refocus them to think gardening here. And we made the pollinator alleyway out in the field first, just to draw attention to the farm. And then the bug happened. It was time then to start a real garden. So in 2019, in May, when it was 92 degrees, we tackled the field, and it was brutal. As Mike has told you, there was no soil, hardpan, and quackgrass. So we put in a very small 4 by 12 plot and called it good and left it for the year.
This is a plant called Cuban oregano, or Coleus amboinicus. And if you look closely, the leaves are quite thick, much like a coleus or some of the houseplants that you may have. And you think, how could I use that as an herb or as a spice in cooking? But this is widely used in the Caribbean as an oregano substitute. And so if you take it and chew on it a bit, chew a little piece, what I get is something really indescribable. It's a combination of oregano, cucumber, and something else I can't quite put my finger on, marjoram or something like that. It's very refreshing. And so you can imagine this in maybe a cold salad or something.
Barbara Murphy was the one on staff at the Land Trust, but she brought her husband into the planning as soon as the idea of the pollinator garden began to develop.
The best part of the garden is having Mike's skills. Mike's artistic and creative skills are really what make our garden, as I'd like to say, a garden unlike any other. It is truly spectacular. And there are times when Mike has a creative endeavor that I think for a while we shouldn't be going down this path, but then it works.
As public gardens go, I would say for a pollinator garden, it's the best I've seen. I would say this is the best pollinator garden I've ever seen. Somebody must work pretty hard at this to maintain this.
We're a homeschool family, and we've been coming here for years, and recently discovered the kids' garden in the back and can't stop coming. It's amazing. It's really beautiful, and there's lots to do, and it's a great place to be creative, and the kids can play tag and get lost for a while.
It's an incredibly beautiful place, and it's doing great things for our environment.
Overall, everyone loves the garden. They consider it, this is the best news to me because they say it is such a beautiful community asset. They don't see it as a private holding, but as something for the whole community to enjoy. And last year, over 11,000 people visited the garden from all over the world. So they're coming, learning about biodiversity and gardens and what they can do. They're learning about Mahoosic Land Trust and land conservation on a large scale. And they're learning about what a special place Western Maine and Bethel are. One garden doing all of that.
When there are people who've never been to Habitat for All Garden in Bethel at Valentine Farm, it is what I often say as a volunteer, it is so hard to put into words what's here. I've said that numerous times this season. I take pictures, I post videos to friends and family and community. But if I had to put it into words, I kind of say, I don't like to tell you what to do, but you gotta come. That's the first thing I say. And then I say, we have a botanical garden in Western Maine now. And they kind of think, wait, we only have a botanical garden on the coast. I tell them, come see our botanical garden, and then I also say, I challenge you to come see what it's like, because no pictures do it justice.
The garden can be, I think, best be described as a semi-wild garden. On one hand, you've got nature, which is truly wild. On the other hand, you've got something that's highly managed. Think of traditional herbaceous or perennial gardens where there's a plant and a plant and a plant spaced out evenly, maybe with bark mulch in between. We're somewhere in between, where we let plants re-sow, we let plants get a little bit beyond their bounds, and it's filled in all the spaces. It looks like nature. Certainly we have to get in and edit and do things here and there, remove plants that are too exuberant. But by and large, it's filled in and it's created this semi-wild space that makes people feel they're enveloped in nature and they're enamored with it.
The love of nature is only one of the elements at the Habitat for All garden. The other is a love of learning, and Barbara Murphy, a teacher by profession, can sometimes be found leading groups using the garden as an open-air classroom. She's aided in this by the signs and displays found along the garden paths, explaining the importance of pollinators in an easy-to-understand way and offering more information about the birds and the bees than most people pick up in years of formal schooling.
It is a semi-wild place that simulates nature, and it's filled with the touch of humans. And by that I mean it's filled with handmade things, pieces of artwork, signs, things that people have created, pathways, small buildings. These are small groups of volunteers, oftentimes without a lot of skills, that have created something. So we wanted the handmade look. We wanted the sort of semi-wild look.
The garden is the heartbeat of the program, but it also has, we have webinars, we have nature walks, we have a birding program, we have a story walk, book trail. I manage all of the volunteers outside of stewardship. There's media and writing responsibilities as well.
The initial focus of the garden was to create a place that simulated nature, something you could recreate in your backyard on a small scale. And beyond that, the thing is, if you could recreate a piece of nature in your backyard, it would naturally bring in pollinators, it would bring in butterflies, it would bring in the little critters that people are enamored with and that are in peril around the world. So you're doing some good, and you get to expose yourself and your family, your kids especially, to the wonders of seeing a bumblebee or a monarch butterfly up close.
What's important to do when you come to this garden is to slow down and look. And I think we don't do that enough in our world. I think screens are here and we miss all that's literally buzzing around us. So I would say first-time visitors, the best thing to do, walk slowly and see what your sense of curiosity and wonder bring to your vision.
One of the questions we get asked a lot by visitors is, what milkweed should I grow in my garden? And oftentimes they will preface that question by saying they tried to grow native milkweed in the past and it's taken over their garden. And it's one of the characteristics of the native milkweed that it spreads far and wide and will be a nuisance. We recommend this plant here. This is called pink milkweed or swamp milkweed, and it doesn't spread at all. It just puts down a taproot, which grows deeper, deeper, deeper. The only thing about this is that it requires some moisture. So in a real dry spell, you'll have to water it. But it will attract the monarchs who will lay eggs on the leaves, and then the caterpillars will eat the leaves, not causing it any harm at all, and you'll get to see the caterpillars and then maybe later the adult butterflies.